A Ride on the Metro, 1990. Licensed to Practice Prostitution, Great Britain, 1876. A young guy spent almost 13 years in a coma. Upon waking up, he revealed that he heard every word said to him, including his mother saying, "I hope you die." A device for focusing on reading and writing, invented by Hugo Gernsback, provided deep noise isolation, supplied pure oxygen, and limited vision to a narrow slit for text, USA, 1925. Attempt to cure a child suffering from rickets by passing them through a hole in a healing tree, Sweden, 1918. Divers, 1940s. Anti-Reagan poster, widely circulated in 1984. Mad dictator Idi Amin declares a one-day war at the United States, only to declare himself the winner the next day. Uganda, 1975. During his rule, up to 500,000 people were victims of repression, with at least 2,000 of his own citizens killed personally by the president. Masonic Lodge Meeting, USA, Arizona, 1897. A photo of a woman who put an ad to sell her 4 children. It's unclear whether she's crying or hiding her face in shame. USA, 1948. Bill Gates, with a fortune of $90 billion and number 2 on the Forbes list, stands in line for a burger in Seattle. Initially, Halloween lanterns were not made from pumpkins. In the 19th century, turnips were used for thus, and such lanterns looked truly horrifying. An experiment to train students under hypnosis. The students are in a trance and listen to a lesson recording through headphones. Italy, 1963. Unit 731, a conveyor belt of death. A special unit of the Japanese Armed Forces conducted biological weapons research, experimenting on live humans to determine how long a person could survive under various conditions, such as boiling water, dehydration, starvation, frostbite, and electric shock. Toys of Children, prisoners of the Nazi death camp Majdanek, discovered after liberation by Soviet soldiers, 1944. A watch raised from the Titanic. It stopped at 2:28, 2 minutes after the crash. USA. Photo from 1985. Victorian women who never cut their hair, 1885. Napoleon, the mascot of the French artillery during the Battle of Verdun, France, World War I, 1916. The Battle of Stalingrad was the bloodiest battle in world history. It lasted almost 8 months, and by February 1943, the combined losses of both sides amounted to more than 2.63 million people. A strange device that horrified animal lovers, 1940. The musicians who played on the Titanic until the very end, 1912. People skating on frozen Niagara Falls, 1885. Shell casings after shelling enemy positions, Vietnam, 1967. The 1950s. A woman using Wilhelm Reich's orgone accumulator, a pseudo-scientific device claimed to collect life energy and cure radiation sickness. Regardless of its scientific merit, it was certainly beneficial. As one husband remarked, his wife sits silently in that box for 4 hours every day. Egyptians try Pepsi Cola, Cairo, 1946. The sinking of the Lusitania, 1915. British soldiers blinded after a gas attack, waiting in line for the doctor. Colleagues at the bedside of Catherine Wolfe Donahue, who was dying of a tumor and had lost all her teeth, USA, 1938. The girls were engaged in hand-painting glowing watch faces with radium-based paint. Factory management knew about the dangers of radium, but did not warn their workers. Leg prosthetics, a technology ahead of its time, year 1900. Early advancements in biomechanical support. Brigitte Bardot became one of the brightest female icons of the 20th century, and at the World's Fair in the Vatican Pavilion, her photo was displayed as a symbol of sin. A roller coaster ride in the Victorian era, USA, 1900. A horse in a tree after a storm in Louisville, Kentucky, 1937. Let's compare the first telephoto lens to modern ones, 1900. James Robert Rinrose was on the FBI's most wanted criminals list. When FBI agents arrested him, he told them he had prepared for the arrest, as he had been carrying the essentials for years, and handed them a free jail release card from the board game Monopoly. A photograph of Rainey Bethia, taken 2 weeks before his hanging for the rape of a 70-year-old white woman. It was the last public execution in America, 1936. The rabbit invasion in Australia. In 1859, Englishman Thomas Austin released 24 rabbits into the wild to add native touches to the Australian landscape. The Australian climate allowed the voracious animals to breed year-round. By 1926, Australia had an estimated 20 billion rabbits. Female prison guard with her inmates. New Orleans, 1963. A giant Ferris wheel at the World's Fair in Chicago, 1893, USA. Light bulbs were once repaired. A worker at a Soviet factory is restoring burned-out electric lamps. December 1942. Actress Anita Ekberg walked out with a bow to the paparazzi because they were following her all night. 1960. The Shanghai waterfront is filled with evacuation boats after the Communists' victory in China, 1946. In 1929, during the Soviet-Chinese conflict, a Soviet shell accidentally killed a prostitute in a Japanese brothel. The Japanese consulate sued the USSR for 22,500 yen, calculating the sum based on the number of clients and the income she could have brought to Japan over her lifespan. The residents of Borena, near the Christian school, await the appearance of the Virgin Mary, whom a few kids supposedly saw there the day before. Belgium, 1933. Coin-operated shaving machine, USA, 1940. A young man says goodbye to his grandmother as he leaves for war, circa 1917, World War I. Feminist Ellen Wagner stands beside 350,000 signatures demanding women's right to vote, Sweden, 1914. Survivors of the Titanic approach. The SS Carpathia, 1912. A military trick by German General Leto Vorbeck. The youngest soldier, at the end of the line, jumps into an elephant's foot, trampling the tracks. German East Africa, World War I, around 1914. The first match between Madrid's Real and Barcelona, 1929. These are now the most decorated football clubs in the world. This is a screenshot from the 1970s show, The Dating Game. The man circled is serial killer Rodney Alcala. He became the winner of the show, but the woman refused to go on a date with him. Imagine how lucky she was. The last photo of the passengers of the Uruguayan Air Force plane that crashed in the Andes on October 13, 1972. Of the 45 people, 27 survived. They had to feed on the bodies of the deceased. After 72 days, rescuers found 16 survivors. In 1931, the Bulu tribe of Cameroon, upon learning of the Great Depression in the U.S., raised $3.77 to help starving American families. It is their desire to help that is noteworthy, not the meager sum. American officers at the Ohrdruf concentration camp, April 1945. As American troops approached the camp, German guards shot the remaining prisoners. A Zippo lighter belonging to an unknown American pilot. Before anesthesia, speed was very important in performing surgeries to minimize the patient's pain. Robert Liston was considered the fastest surgeon of his time. Once, Liston amputated a patient's leg in 28 seconds, accidentally cutting off his assistant's fingers. Both the patient and the assistant died from sepsis, and one witness to the operation died from shock, making this the deadliest surgery in history. The crisis in the USA, 1931. Gangster Al Capone was one of the first to organize meals for the poor and homeless during the Great Depression. Army priest in a camouflage cassock, Vietnam, 1968. A police officer patiently waits in the hospital waiting room as the victim of a gunshot, wound to the leg, tells him what happened, 1978. Korean War veterans display experimental prostheses, South Korea, 1955. One of many variants of Vietnamese combat traps. When an American soldier fell into such a pit, his own weight would turn him into mince. People fight for books, Plovdiv, Bulgaria, 1980. One of the warehouses, filled to the ceiling with victims' shoes, Auschwitz, Poland, 1944. In Mozambique, Africa, a bald man was once again killed and beheaded. The reason is a superstition that the heads of bald men are full of gold, and some locals believe this. Men show off a shared dual mustache. A group shaving device. The machine could simultaneously shave 12 people, 1903. Brunettes boycotting the film Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, 1953. In 1895, two cars collided in Ohio. The oddity of this case is that the automobile industry was just beginning, and there were only two cars in the entire state. A wedding procession in the 1960s, USSR. The entire village would gather for the newlyweds celebration. What athletes of the 19th to 20th centuries looked like. Residents of Hiroshima walking outside 10 minutes after the nuclear explosion, 1945. American women donate nylon stockings to the Army, light, durable, and thick. They were ideal for use as powder bags for artillery, USA, 1944. In 1996 at New Delhi Airport, a Saudi Arabian Airlines Boeing 747 and a Kazakh Il-76 collided. Both flights were on the same route but in opposite directions, and the pilots failed to communicate their intentions in time because they could not speak English. The crash killed 349 passengers and crew. The 1960s became the era of the mini skirt. However, women had to fight for the right to wear them. Vincenzo Peruggia stole the Mona Lisa from the Louvre in 1911, and in 1913, the painting was found in his hotel room in Florence. Children play with bundles of money during hyperinflation. Germany, 1922. Inside a German World War I submarine. Dogs that survived the Titanic disaster. Of the 12 dogs on board, only 3 survived, 1912. Bundles and bags with personal belongings on the streets of the Krakow ghetto after the remaining inhabitants were sent to Auschwitz, March 1943. They were ordered to leave their things. They would no longer need them. American prisoners of war liberated from a Japanese concentration camp, Philippines, 1945. The clock frozen at 8:15 during the bombing of Hiroshima. In 1930, a terrifying discovery was made. It was a device with a skull inside, which mimicked the contours of a human body. This was how bandits, pirates, and murderers were executed. They were hung for display until they died. A woman in an elegant dress on a dusty street in the Wild West is concealed behind a mask, protecting her from the sun and wind. In an era when a tan was associated with manual labor and aristocratic paleness was the ideal, such accessories were considered a necessity. In 1965, 90-year-old French woman Jeanne Calment sold her apartment to a 47-year-old lawyer who agreed to make monthly payments to her until her death, with the total amount based on a 10-year lifespan. In the end, Calment received money from him for 30 years and outlived the lawyer, with his widow continuing the payments for 2 more years. A Soviet soldier rolls a captured German bicycle while starving locals butcher a fallen horse for meat. Berlin, World War II, 1945. During the grueling search at Ground Zero in 2001, rescue dogs began spiraling into depression because they were only finding bodies. To boost their morale, volunteers hid in the rubble, allowing the dogs to find living survivors and restore their spirit. A local entrepreneur who carried chairs on his back and rented them out for 10 cents to tired tourists. Turkey, 1920. This 1959 photo captures the participants of the famous Dyatlov Pass expedition, heading into the snowy mist. It is their last known photograph before the tragic events, which remain one of the most mysterious mysteries of the 20th century. A masquerade ball, Ball of the Illuminati, hosted by the Rothschilds in 1972. Pro-Khomeini militia fighters patrolled the streets looking for the Arab population. Khorram Shah, Iran, 1979. At the 1920 Olympics, Teresa Velde became the first woman to perform a Salchow jump, but judges disapproved. Peaky Blinders, members of the gang that terrorized Birmingham in 1903. These are Buchenwald concentration camp guards, captured by prisoners during the final days of World War II. We all know what became of them: long, horrific torture and suffering. Germany, 1945. A police officer on a Harley with an old-fashioned mobile pre-arrest camera, 1921. What X-rays looked like in the 1900s. An animal with an IQ comparable to a human's, Coco, the gorilla. She knew over 1,000 sign language signs and could understand around 2,000 English words. Coco could describe her feelings, curse, and joke. For example, once she jokingly called herself a good bird, saying she could fly, but later admitted it was just for fun. She passed away in the morning of 2018. One of the first home vacuum cleaners, Siemens Elmo, 1906. Oil-rich Native American, Oklahoma, USA, 1920. On April 1st, 1915, in the midst of World War I, a French plane appeared over a German camp and dropped what looked like a huge bomb. The soldiers scattered, waiting for an explosion, but none came. Instead, a large ball landed, bearing the words "April Fools." France, circa 1945. Boys staring through a bakery window at trays of fresh pastries and bread. Oskar Schindler, the German entrepreneur who saved nearly 1,200 Jews during the Holocaust by giving them work in his factories in Poland and the Czech Republic. Thank you for watching this video until the end. I hope these photos impressed you. Some may have made you angry, brought a smile, made you happy, or perhaps even caused some negativity. Feel free to leave your comments and stay tuned for the next part. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. Bye.